Hi everyone, this is Pranav versus Jacob. Played on the 16th of February 2019. It's round one. Let's have a look. It's a very short game. A few lessons here to be learnt. Pranav was white, Jacob was black. We got a French defense. Yeah, straight off the bat, I'm not a big fan of knight f3. I know it's playable, and you can do this sort of thing if you're planning to play like a King's Indian attack type position. Even then, I don't think it's really playable. It's just, yeah, I mean, the only reason why you'd want to play knight f3 is if you're planning to play the exchange French. And I don't like the exchange French for white because I think, and that's exactly what happened in the game, the exchange French. It just takes all the pressure off black. White's not really pushing his first move advantage. I think if your opponent is playing e6 on move one, you gotta try and grab the center. And your opponent's going to play d5, and your opponent gets a center pawn. The French is actually the only opening, I think, is against e4, where you actually get to secure and keep a center pawn right bang in the middle. So it's a good opening as black. But yeah, this bishop, the consequence of doing this is this bishop gets trapped in for a very long time. And white should consider maybe learning the advanced French, or maybe learning one of these knight c3 lines, or if you really want to, the Tarrasch. It's quite a complex system, the French Tarrasch. But yeah, simply playing the exchange French, I think, doesn't put black under any pressure. On a psychological side of it, though, black is considered the much stronger player of the two. So maybe white was just simply thinking, let's just keep this as as symmetrical and as drawish as we can, and maybe hold a draw. So from that point of view, maybe that was his game plan. And if it was, yeah, well done. Okay, that's fair enough. But even against good players, I still think you should be trying to push the advantage, trying to put them under pressure. Okay, knight f6. So here we go, c4. So he's playing one of these c4 lines in the exchange French. It's it does try to create a bit of pressure, but whoops, one of the downsides is at the end of it all, white's going to end up with an isolated d pawn. These pawns nearly always get swapped off. Or unless black decides to play some sort of c6 line and take back with the pawn. Let's actually have a look at the moves possible. There's quite a lot here. Black can play bishop d6, or bishop b4 check, or bishop e7, or knight c6 is even a move apparently. And yeah, they're the main four. What actually happened? Bishop g4. Bishop g4 is not considered one of the options. Just trying to think, is there any real danger to bishop g4? Not really. I mean, the only thing I can say is that because the e-file is open, developing your king side is generally more important than developing your queen side. And particularly when this c-pawn is moved, there's real danger of queen b3 ideas coming in, attacking this pawn, making it very uncomfortable, and also defending the knight at the same time, and also putting pressure on d5. So bishop g4, I don't think this pin is very, very strong. I think, yeah, if anything, it might give white a potential option. There doesn't seem to be anything right now that white can do that's too deadly, but there might be in a few moves' time where queen b3 becomes a very real problem. I would recommend developing this bishop, either throw the check in or just go bishop e7. Bishop d6 is pretty good as well, trying to entice white to play c5, because this pawn does not want to be on c5. The pawn wants to be putting pressure on d5. And if that happens, just go back to e7. You should be happy that the pawn's on c5. You can put quite a bit of pressure on it with a move like b6, for instance. But white's pressure has disappeared. So yeah, bishop g4, yeah, I don't think that pin is very dangerous. So knight c3 was played now. Continuing this idea of pressurizing here, both players want to be developing their queen side, but the game should be a race. Develop your king side as fast as you can. Bishop e2, castle, get your rook on the e-file as soon as you possibly can. So yeah, I'm not really a fan. I mean, one of the issues with bishop e2 is that your opponent might take here. It's not really a problem. He can't really defend it. You can kind of just ignore it, knowing that you're going to pick that pawn up later on. You can just castle if you want and just be happy with the fact that your opponent has wasted a move taking that pawn. And your rook is really very close to getting on the e-file and threatening some things against this king. So yeah, bishop e2 is what I'm thinking. Knight c3, still, that's a fine move. It's just not really racing your opponent to control the e-file. So c6 was played to defend here, and now I'm a bit concerned about black. Black should probably, I don't know. C6 on principle looks like the right idea because you want to take back with a pawn after pawn takes, pawn takes, you want to be able to take back with a pawn and keep a pawn in the center of the board. However, I'd be a bit concerned with, maybe a bishop check coming in here or something like that. I'm just concerned about the fact that these kingside is not developed yet. It's a bit scary. Like, what if takes and then takes back with the pawn, and then you threw in, either queen b3 hitting this and putting pressure on here, or maybe bishop b5 check. And the idea behind this bishop b5 check is that you gain a whole extra free tempo in the race to getting your king castled, and maybe it's okay. Maybe black can just get castled in time. It's getting a bit tricky. Back here after c6, the engine is suggesting a couple of things. Suggesting h3 for one. It's also just suggesting just taking. And if takes back, it really likes queen b3 and h3. Queen b3 in particular. And yeah, the pressure on here is a pain. And the pressure on here is a pain. And I mean, this bishop could take here, but then you get a complicated line with the queen coming in here and taking back later. And white wins a pawn, I think. How else does he develop? How else does he defend this? I mean, he can't play queen d7 because knight e5 is just devastating, I think. And yeah, I mean, moves like b6 are generally terrible. In this case, bishop b5 check is devastating because I think he loses this pawn here. This knight has to jump in the way, interfering with the queen. So yeah, queen b3 was the move here. I mean, taking on d5 and then playing queen b3. What he played was queen e2. Now this is quite clearly a positional blunder. There is a race to get your bishop out and get your king castled kingside. No, neither player seems to want to race each other. But this not only doesn't help with that race, it actually hinders the race. Putting the queen in the way of the bishop is it just looks very, very bad. And just the simple bishop e7. Well done to black. He's just threatening to castle rook e8 and then destroy this king. So white's now gone c5. No. That pawn is needed to continue pressure on here. But in particular, this king, the problem of this king needs to be sorted out immediately. Maybe h3 is the idea, hoping that your opponent will take, so you can take back with the queen and release your bishop. Your opponent will play bishop h5, and maybe you have to just go g4 and accept having a bit of a weakened pawn structure. And the idea is you can probably play bishop g2 now, and you can always get your king off this line if it starts to get scary on the e-file. But what was played was c5, which takes away quite a bit of the pressure off d5, and yeah, there's no actual threats here. This actually just helps black. Black doesn't have to worry about the defense of this pawn. Although once his queen moved to e2, queen b3 was no longer in the picture anyway, so there was also no pressure. That decreased the pressure on this pawn even more. And our castles, that's correct. White is in deep trouble. White is really, really in trouble. The idea of just moving the rook on this file and then discovered attack with the bishop is almost impossible to stop. Maybe something like queen d3. It gets the queen out of the way of the bishop and defends the knight at the same time, which allows the bishop to go to e2, and maybe white can just scrape his king to safety in time. Something like that is needed here. What he played was b4, and that's it. It's got to be game over now. It's looking pretty terrible. Just rook e8, and how do you deal with just the simple bishop takes c5 threat? Oops, not like that, obviously. Yeah, white's in trouble. White's in deep, deep trouble. This knight is pinned to the queen. This bishop's threatening to take the pawn. We've discovered attack on the queen. It's pretty devastating. White played bishop e3 and just tried to jam his bishop in the way. Yeah, and what did black play? Black played knight a6. According to the engine, a5 is very strong. And I'd have to agree. There's another problem with putting the queen on e2. There's nothing defending the rook. You can't play a3 anymore to defend your pawn because it's pinned. And yuck. So a5 is definitely the way to play here. It sort of forces something like b5. And now, yeah, there's a few options here, but the one that the engine loves is b6. And what's happening here is all these pawns are about to get swapped off, which means this king is not castling queenside. And with the queen sitting in the way of the bishop, the king's not castling kingside either. And the rook's on this line. White is in deep, deep trouble. So a5 was the move here. a5 really put white under extraordinary pressure. And maybe he could play something like queen b2 or something like that. After takes, the engine's suggesting b6 for some reason. Doesn't that lose a pawn? Can't he just take it? Oh, bishop b4 at the end. Yeah, this is tricky. You know, something like king d2 needs to get played to keep everything safe. But then, yeah, rook a3, and then, yeah, if you try and defend it, then you've got knight e4, and you end up winning it with everything. It's pretty cool. b6. The idea of trying to get this pawn out of the way so the bishop can come to b4 with check. Pretty nice. Okay, so a5 wasn't played. Knight a6 was played, hitting the pawn, which pretty much forces a3. Now, black's advantage black has still got the advantage, but it's much harder to find the right moves here. Now, what black played was good. Knight e4. That's great. The idea is the knight cannot take because you take back with the pawn, and well, because of the pin here, the pin pylon, once the pawn gets on e4, you've lost a piece. So this queen needs to move somewhere over either c2 or b2 to defend the knight. Maybe c2, I don't know. Yeah, maybe c2. What's going on? To defend the knight, and then that lets the bishop out, although these pawns are getting wrecked. And yeah, this king is never finding a safe spot. It doesn't want to go to the king side with all these giant holes here. And it doesn't really want to go to the queen side. Maybe it can. Maybe castling long is the way to do it now that these pawns are in a chain. And black has sort of made the mistake of putting the knight here when this pawn should have been coming up here. But still, this is wide open. And black's position's looking great. The only thing white has is two bishops. It's really strong. But queen didn't go to c2. The knight went out to a4. Where is it going? What are you doing, Mr. Knight? It's maybe some maneuver, knight here to here to here or something. I don't know. A knight on the rim is dim, and this queen desperately needs to move to let the bishop out. So yeah, queen c2 kills two birds with one stone. Knight a4 is just throwing a knight out on the edge. Now this is just winning for black. And black found one of the two winning moves, bishop g5. Bishop h4 is also incredibly strong here. It's just very, very powerful. The idea behind bishop h4 is if g3 is played, then you put the bishop back here, and this knight has lost an extra defender. And if g3 doesn't get played, oops, where are we? Knight a4. Okay, so after here, if g3 doesn't get played, what does he do? This pawn's getting destroyed. You know, for example, if he castles long here, you've just got knight takes there with a knight fork, and of course the bishop can't take because the rook is pinning it to the queen. Okay, the bishop g5 is also super duper strong, very strong move, and yeah, I mean, how do you deal with this? It's yeah. For example, if you played like something like rook a2, then you know you've got moves like bishop takes f3, and you know if the queen tries to take, then you've got some really weird stuff going on, like this, for instance. And the idea is if you know if the king takes, you just grab the bishop. If the rook takes, you just take it, but this time you take with the rook. And the material at the end is, black is at least a pawn up, but white still isn't developed. The queen's on, oh yeah, that wins the queen, doesn't it? So yeah, king taking with the king's the only move, really. But yeah, after this, what does white do? Can he go back to e1 or e2? But yeah, now there's just bishop takes d4, check, and white's lost so much stuff. In this position, so yeah, it's a removal of the defender. The pawn's defending the bishop. You just remove the defender, then the bishop's toast. In this position, white took the bishop on g5, and that just lost instantly. Black just played knight takes g5 with a discovered attack on the queen. Discovered pin, I guess you'd call it, because you're pinning the queen to the king. And there's nothing black can do. He's going to lose an enormous amount of material. So here, black resigned. Oh, not black resigned. Sorry, white resigned, not black resigned. Black just pinned the queen to the king, and white just gave up. And fair enough, he's just lost his queen. You know, if he tries to like take here, and then king here or something. Oh, can't even do that. Knight e5. No, that results in f6. Everything's bad. Okay, so yeah, this really highlights the whole idea of if there's an open e-file, the kings are just facing each other with no pawns in the way. It is a race to get, you really do need to race to get your pieces out and get your king castled as quickly as possible. And a move like queen e2, that just left white in a position where there were an enormous number of just very bad moves and only a few lines that actually kept him safe. And you don't want to be in that position where you're under pressure, and when you're under pressure, finding good moves is hard. You have to be incredibly precise and accurate. Black is not under any pressure at all, and even if black plays bad moves, it doesn't matter because there really are no bad moves. Okay, I hope you all learned something from that, and goodbye.